It is the most wide open French Open, I think, in 20 plus years, and for two reasons. The first, because Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic have combined for 17 of the 20 titles in the last 20 years, with Nadal winning 14 of those. More on that in a minute. But second, Djokovic, along with Sinner, Alcaraz, and Medvedev, have just dominated the big tournament finals in the last year or so. I think in 2023 that Monte Carlo was the only one where at least one of them wasn't in the finals, and every time they were in the finals, they won the finals. So all but one of the Masters last year. In the finals at two of the last four slams, winning all four. Between them, with that continuing in Australia, with the Masters or the Sunshine Double. It was only the clay season that kind of broke wide open, with Alcaraz and Sinner both getting injured and pulling out in Madrid. Djokovic has kind of just declined and left a lot of questions about what his play is going to be heading in. So it really feels like a more wide open than I think anyone was expecting it to feel at this point. So I think what's likely is we don't see two of those players in the finals. We see one of those three or four players are going to get it together, make it through their quarter. Maybe they have to play one of those other top four players in the quarter or in the semi. It would be in the semi because that's how math and seeding works. But then they probably have an easy win in the final. It's kind of who is going to find their play in this first week of tennis and get through it quicker and show the most promising signs. And then that's probably the one of them who wins it. But I think there are plenty of dark horse and long shot candidates, or just lower seeds that have a chance of maybe making it to the finals. So I'm going to go through each quarter. We're already 2 days in, so everyone but Djokovic and the top five has played at this point. But of course, how much did you hear? We have to kick it off with potentially Rafael Nadal's final match at the French Open. The first time in his career he loses two matches in a row on clay. The fourth time in his career he loses at the Roland Garros courts in straight sets to Alex Zverev today.
Yeah, was he such a low seed because he hasn't played in a while? Because that seemed like a pretty brutal first round opponent.
I don't know if he got in on wild card or on protected ranking. He I think is in the 3 to 500s right now, so he wouldn't qualify on his own. I think it was probably protected ranking. I didn't notice the wild card seed,
Sure.
But just insane poetry, rhyming if not repeating, where Alex Zverev, at the peak of his career, is in the semifinals with a serious shot of winning against Rafael Nadal. And then that injury just sets him on a completely different trajectory, where he achieves his career high ranking of number 2 in the world and then does not play for the rest of the season, and more time heading in, and slowly has to rebuild. And then finally kind of gets back close to where his level is, winning Rome, the last clay Masters 1000. And then that is the first time they rematch since that match where the injury occurred. And Nadal won the final in against Rudd in really straightforward fashion. And Zverev did lose last year in the semifinals to Rudd. So I can't say for certain, but I feel like the Zverev that beats Nadal in the semifinals would have probably had no problem with Rudd. So just such a that injury might, and that match, the fork between Grand Slam champion attached to his resume and a completely different career. So a crazy matchup on both sides for Nadal, just a really steep uphill climb. And I was working today, so I kind of like every time we got in the truck, I whipped out my phone. Thanks for the 30 gigs of data I have on my plan now, and was just kind of watching as much of the match as I could. And from what I saw, like Nadal showed up. Nadal was playing points. The Zverev serve was firing consistently, but like it wasn't a really deadly weapon that was just taking Nadal completely out of the match when I was watching in the second and third set. But and Nadal was attacking. He was doing what he could, creating angles, moving pretty well, I thought. The difference, I thought, or what Zverev did to make it such a straightforward, straight set win was just have a really, really effective backhand that completely took the cross-court forehand that is often Nadal's biggest weapon out of play or made it not a threat. And then his forehand was very tight, very few unforced errors from it. He was able to attack really consistently. He did look like he is going to have no problem walking his way to the quarterfinals, at least. I'm not sure if I'm sold on it because he's such a wild card, but Medvedev could potentially meet Zverev there in the quarterfinals. Medvedev wins his first match as well today. A really interesting clay version. He shows up like this really loopy forehand and more drop shots than I think I've ever seen Alcaraz do in a match Medvedev had today. He was just spamming them like with a lot of effectiveness. So it looks like he's trying something different in terms of play style. You never know like what you're going to get from him on clay, but that could be a really interesting matchup with Zverev if we get there. So that's that quarter. The only top seed who hasn't played yet, Novak Djokovic, sits in the other quarter of the top half. Really inconsistent year so far. Still 12th in the world in the 2024 points accrued so far. So like his worst season since I think 2007, but like a season most players would love to be having still. But I think best of three is going to help him and give him more space to find his game. He had a okay run in Geneva before losing 6-1 in kind of out of nowhere fashion. So his level hasn't been consistent enough compared to previous years. And that is a ridiculously high standard that he set. But without seeing it, like it's hard to know if he can make it through the first three rounds. Interesting quarters and round four matchups of like Paul and then like Fritz or Rudd, all players he has a really good head-to-head matchup against. So if he can get it rolling and like mostly 3-4 set wins in those first three rounds, I think I can see him making it to at least the quarterfinals. But if he's struggling, if he's having to like win and fight a lot harder in matches that he shouldn't be in those first three rounds, especially because I think he kind of takes Fritz and Rudd's lunch money in his sleep at this point. Then like he runs into like a really good version of Zverev, or even Medvedev is a little harder to swallow, but especially in the finals, those top versions of Alcaraz and Sinner we've been seeing this year, I think he's going to have to really show something in his half and quarter of the draw to show us that he can still compete at that level, and we'll find out. On the bottom half, so Carlos Alcaraz played yesterday, Jannik Sinner played today. They both win their matches in straight sets. A lot of injury questions are the only thing surrounding those two right now. Oh, they both pulled out of Madrid. Alcaraz, I think more straightforwardly, it was like a tendon in his right arm. Sinner was a lot more mysterious about his. He knows what it is. They're not concerned. They don't know if he's going to be able to play Roland Garros and Wimbledon, I think was the worst case concerns I was hearing. But he's back. He's moving. He says he's confident. So we'll see for both of them, like how good their injury management is. I think Alcaraz, the more established player on clay at this point in his career, Roland Garros, one of the two Grand Slams he has not yet won. So he's my favorite to win the tournament just based on that, and based on at Indian Wells really showing he can peak on the surfaces best for him. His portion of the draw sits Andrei Rublev, who also got through the first match, and Stefanos Tsitsipas in Rublev's section as well. So if Rublev makes it to the quarters, he would be at that point in all 4 Grand Slams on his record. It would be a potential really interesting quarterfinals matchup if Rublev and Alcaraz could play, because it would be the rematch of the Madrid run that Rublev took to win his second career Masters 1000. So definitely eyes on Andre to see how he can do this week, and if he is showing a game that can potentially challenge Alcaraz. The Tsitsipas match first with Rublev would also be really fun. A bit of comments from Tsitsipas in the past. And Stefanos has won one of the other Clay Masters 1000 as well, and of course a previous Roland Garros finalist. What else? No. Yeah, so Sinner also won in straight sets against Eubanks. I think clay probably the surface he's least established on. I don't know if I've said this, but Sinner is my favorite to win Wimbledon for sure this year. Like, he has shown grass aptitude. Obviously, he's shown the hard court aptitude. So relative to that, still a little unsure what to expect from him on clay. He hasn't won a Masters yet. The expectation is that he will. It's just, is now this the year? With the injury taking him out of 1.5 of the Masters events. He was looking good in Monte Carlo until a little collapse against Tsitsipas. So going to be really interesting to see what he puts together in this first part of the week. Hubert Hurkacz and Grigor Dimitrov would be his likely quarterfinal matchups. So we'll see how they get going. I have my eye on Hurkacz, particularly because Denis Shapovalov is a potential third round matchup with Hubert Hurkacz. Shapovalov with one of the most satisfying wins I've seen in his like the last year. Today at the French, I was really happy to see him get through in straight sets, get more aggressive and accelerate the closeout of the match with the effectiveness of that serve, deal with some mental hurdles, have his one-handed backhand be targeted repeatedly and have it stand up to that, and have him show some shot selection to let the opponent just make unforced errors, because that was what was happening within the flow of the match. So all promising things that Shapo might be getting back to that consistent fourth to quarterfinal Grand Slam level that was so fun to watch a couple of years ago. Felix also making it through in straight sets in the first round. So I'm really excited for Roland Garros and checking in on this next week. That's going to be pretty much the whole show. Thank you everyone for listening. If you've still made it this far, till next week, Sports Next Door signing out.